Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a news roundup video, and today we are entirely locked into DC, the DCU, DC Studios, with a few more tidbit updates that have, interested me to say the least. There's quite a few of these topics which, as always, fuel the fire of speculation of what could be happening in the future, but also keep getting brought up here and there. So, while we're tackling some news tidbits today, it also feels like a little bit of a discussion series. So honestly, as always, please leave your own thoughts down in the comments section when it comes to what we get into in today's video. If you don't know already, these videos are always time-stamped, and other than that, if you're brand new here and you enjoy the videos, maybe you've seen one or two of them, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all the latest. So, first of all, I think what I want to touch on once again is James Gunn. This is a few weeks away until we find out what is going on here. But James Gunn, once again, reiterates how crazy things are going to be getting in Peacemaker's final 3 episodes. And I want to stress, I haven't seen him. I have no idea. We have some kind of idea here, hence the discussion series kind of speculation I want everyone to get involved in. Because we have James Gunn saying, I am the one who's keeping the 3 episodes away from everybody because there's too many surprises in those last 3 episodes. Especially 6 and 8. They are just crazy. My favorite things I've ever done of anything. With this, my only concern is that I don't want people getting overhyped, because I always like to temper expectations. I don't want to be a downer on things, but I feel like if something to the levels of Brainiac isn't teased in now season 2, episodes 6, 7, and 8, and let's just say it is Booster Gold or, something else we're going to get into in a second, people might be like, oh, well, is that it? I guess it's technically a teaser for something arguably important for the future of the DCU, because Booster Gold is a future project in the DCU. But he was talking about how it's very important to the future. I feel like we need to go into it being like, okay, whatever we get, we can just appreciate it for what it is. That's me trying to be optimistic. I suppose there'll be a lot of people who are like, but I didn't want Kumail Nanjiani as Booster Gold. And fair enough, if it's that kind of thing and you're in that kind of camp. But the reason why I feel like this is getting a bit out of control. And I say out of control just because I am apprehensive as to when these episodes drop. Because if it doesn't deliver for some people, I think we all understand in the fandom, when stuff is teased like this, expectations rise. And then there's the fallout of, well, okay, unless it's crazy, people will be straight on social media typing like, oh, is that it? Is that, I suppose it's kind of cool, but is that it? So we also had Steve Agee, who plays John Economos, aka Diebeard, on the show, being asked by The Hollywood Reporter in an interview, as of this moment, journalists such as myself have only seen the first 5 episodes of Peacemaker Season 2. And Agee explains why, in tantalizing fashion. He also confirms my theory that the central question of Season 2 is whether the grass is truly greener on the other side. So Steve Agee says, there's a reason for that. The last 3 episodes are almost like a whole new season, Agee reveals. They are absolutely insane, and they really cross into that actual question even more so. More of the same, obviously. It's just interesting hearing as well that the final 3 episodes are kind of like an entirely new season. That's now making me think, like, what exactly does he mean by that? But for it to feel like a new season, in addition to the things that Gunn is saying with regards to there's too many surprises in those last 3 episodes, especially 6 and 8, they are crazy. It does even make me kind of really rack my brain as to what that could be. Now, my expectations, and again, let me know your thoughts, your predictions here of what you realistically think it could be, is that it could just be a simple setup of a character that we will see one day in the DCU. I think that makes the most sense. For the longest time, we were thinking, okay, well, Peter Safran said we'd be seeing Lex Luthor again. He's actually a major component of the DCU. Could we see Lex Luthor? I don't know why, they would go to Belle Reve to see Luthor, but there could be something there. That connective tissue is cool. Now, there is another character that could arguably, have easily have been included in Peacemaker Season 2, Episodes 6 and 8. And I've seen quite a few people entertain this one when talking about what we could see. And so DC Film News here over on Twitter says, James Gunn gives a cryptic tease when asked if Blue Beetle makes an appearance in Peacemaker Season 2. And he says, well, you know, I won't say you're not in luck. Now, I think this may have been misinterpreted a little bit because when you listen to the actual video, the quote that was said from the interviewer says, as a fan, I have to say I'm manifesting a Blue Beetle appearance in upcoming seasons. And that's when Gunn says, well, you know, I won't say you're not in luck. He didn't specifically say, you know, hey, what about Blue Beetle in season 2? It was upcoming seasons. Now, I guess maybe this interview could have been done before season 2 aired. I don't know the date on that, so it would have technically been an upcoming season. But overall, do you know what I mean? It's not specifically for season 2. In general here, of course, James Gunn wouldn't say that he's not in luck because Blue Beetle could pop up in theory pretty much anywhere in the future. And one thing I will say is that Gunn really did have quite a transparent, kind of cheeky smile on his face, almost as if he knew in a way, but still, this could apply in so many different areas. I think, you know, Shola Madueña, who plays Jaime Reyes' Blue Beetle, would have been so game to film a little cameo in Peacemaker Season 2. Do you think Blue Beetle could appear? I would say it's a bit of a maybe. Like, who really knows? It did seem to be more about upcoming seasons, and that could also apply to what is already happening in the DCU. Because I've seen some people also comment saying, Boba, did you hear that James Gunn has confirmed that Blue Beetle is canon to the DCU? And it's like, well, do you not remember that they're actually making a Blue Beetle animated series in the DCU? I feel like a lot of people have forgotten that. So Blue Beetle is, well, I guess until that show comes out, technically canon to the DCU anyway. We also had James Gunn recently say that Peacemaker almost there's hardly anything you need to change for him to slide very easily into the DCU. Same with Blue Beetle. So Blue Beetle, in my mind, is absolutely canon to the DCU. They're working on it, it's just when are we going to see him? Now, or while we won't see the animated series for quite some time, could they have actually brought Shola Madueña in behind the scenes? Maybe. So, you know, it's that kind of thing. I could be completely wrong. Might not be Booster Gold, might not be Shola Madueña, might not be like Luthor, but I think it's something like that rather than, you know, because what is bigger than that? Having a larger character involved in one of the final episodes of Peacemaker. And when you ask yourself that, it's kind of like, should you really get your expectations for something even crazier? Because something even crazier would be a crazy character like Batman, for example. And I don't think we're going to see Batman in Peacemaker Season 2. So that's enough of me waffling on about that. But kind of speaking of Batman here, we did have Sol Rodriguez here, who plays Sasha Bordeaux in Peacemaker Season 2. Once again, getting asked about, you know, well, what about the Batman connection from the comics? Because this is something that I've been thinking about ever since we heard that Sasha Bordeaux was arriving in the DCU in a Peacemaker Season 2. So, will she be similar to the comics? Sol Rodriguez said, I tried to maintain her essence from the comics with my personality on top of what James Gunn wrote, which is different than her story with Batman. Now, this is really just an expansion on what we heard a little while back with some other Peacemaker press, where she was asked that, I'm paraphrasing here, but she said she's going to try and bring that essence, but no, she has nothing to do with that. And then Gunn immediately interrupted and said, yet, which is also similar to a brand new quote that we have from James Gunn when he was asked about, will Sasha Bordeaux have a history or future with Batman in the DCU's iteration of the canon? And he says, I think we'll have to see where it goes. We'll have to see what we're doing with Batman. We know some basics going on with Batman and also figuring some things out. And also when James Gunn was asked if Sasha Bordeaux and Batman already met, he said, I didn't say that. And technically, yes, he didn't. He just said yet in the other one. And again, the overarching kind of umbrella of all of this is that, you know, at least provisionally, no, they've kind of put Sasha Bordeaux in Peacemaker Season 2, while the Batman in the DCU's big mind map of things that is going on and what they want to truly do with the character is still being figured out, still in flux with certain things. As Gunn said in that larger quote, we know some basics going on with Batman, such as, okay, in the DCU, we know that Batman's been active for probably more than 3 years or 5 years, because we got Damian Wayne coming into the fold. We know that there's a Bat family to some extent surrounding him, so I doubt that he's got a couple of Bat family members or more when he's just year 2 or year 3 or year 4. It makes more sense, as I've always said, or while this isn't guaranteed, for him to be at least 8 to 10, 11 years into his career, and you can still achieve that with condensing some history chronologically for the DCU's Batman. As I always say, they're not going to copy and paste from super traditional chronology of Robin order, but you can still achieve that and make him mid-30s and still a prime Batman. So there's some basics that they know about their Batman. So it's a bit, when you come back around to what we were discussing with Sasha Bordeaux, yeah, it's a bit awkward to kind of answer, hey, does he have a history? Does she have a history of Bruce Wayne and the way she does in the comics? For those of you who don't know, I mean, I've gone over this before, but it was months and months ago. But basically, Sasha Bordeaux was detailed to be Bruce Wayne's bodyguard, and they got quite involved, even romantically, but things go quite south, where Sasha Bordeaux and Bruce Wayne were framed for murder. They both end up kind of in jail, all while as Bruce escaped as Batman, which led to the charges being dropped on Bruce Wayne. And Sasha Bordeaux, she was injured quite critically by another prisoner, and she would have literally have died, and she was presumed dead, but she would have died if it wasn't from the intervention of this kind of new-ish kind of government agency known as Checkmate, which I've gone on about quite a bit before. And I've theorized, well, or while they might not be copy and pasting here, I really do feel like with what Waller's facing, these congressional hearings and this, that, and the other, her still having some power and whatnot, I said, okay, so maybe the Waller show could get into the formation of something new that she's trying to do, since she doesn't have too much support, but she has some kind of connections, and she might form Checkmate. And maybe, all while things are a bit different here in the DCU, she might go on to maybe be in Checkmate after Peacemaker. Again, like, they don't have to follow the exact events from the comics. I guess you could just say that Sasha goes on to have connections with Bruce in this DCU iteration. But Gunn could also be like, hey, maybe in the future there could be a reference or a line dropped where Sasha had some past with Bruce Wayne in the future before she worked at Argus. I don't know. But overall, it's an interesting quote as well in general to just hear how Gunn says here, we know some basics that are going on with Batman, but they're also figuring some things out. I would love to know the extent of that, just because Brave and the Bold has been worked on for quite a long time now. We even heard how it was indeed being bolstered by James Gunn working incredibly close with the writer, with one of the major trades having it described to them, I think, from a source saying he's even the driving force behind Batman the Brave and the Bold in the DCU. And yet, what are they kind of figuring out, I wonder? I don't think it's necessarily the whole conspiracy rabbit hole of, well, they're waiting, they're figuring things out because they might be making Robert Pattinson the DCU Batman. So, until, we know some basics, but we're going to have to, we're figuring some things out. It's still in flux. I think it's more other things, really. Don't forget how once upon a time, especially when they announced DCU Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters, and at that point it was very firm that, one was Elseworlds, and then there's a Batman in the DCU separate from the epic crime saga. We thought that the Batman Part 2 was coming out a lot earlier, right? And this is what I said in my live stream last night, and shout out to those of you who joined the streams. I said, well, if James Gunn thought that Brave and the Bold would be coming out before 2028 because the Batman Part 2 was meant to be coming out a lot sooner than that, and now things have obviously changed, it's very, there's not really a way that Batman, the DCU's The Brave and the Bold movie will be out before 2028, because we know that they're not going to release that movie in the same calendar year of 2027 where the Batman Part 2 is releasing. So we know that it's at earliest 2028. So it's kind of like, okay, or while we've got some Batman content out there, but it's an Elseworlds story, we might now need to figure some things out where it's like, hey, is there a way I can utilize the character of Batman in the DCU before his own movie? And I think that's a possibility. I think that's something that they might be trying to figure out, in addition to just knowing some of the basics that they want to do foundationally with Batman, such as where he's at in his life, Damian Wayne's coming in, all of these, cornerstones of the story that they're going to do in Brave and the Bold. But maybe, since, again, some things have changed since 2023, and some things have been in flux there, I'm not saying this guarantees him to be in Clayface, but maybe Gunn is looking for a relevant in to feature Batman in the DCU. And we talked about this recently in my previous news roundup, I believe, where it's like, hey, with Gunn talking about his next movie, this somewhat sort of sequel to Superman, the follow-up, surrounding the group of characters in Superman. So not just, okay, is it going to be a Supergirl Superman sequel, but that implies, Justice Gang members as well. Could Batman end up walking in there as well? I don't know. That's stuff that I would really love to hear your thoughts on, because I think those are the things that they might be trying to figure out. Because are they really going to wait a few years until we even get the slightest scent of an appearance of Bruce Wayne? That's something where the more time that goes by, the more I'm kind of extra doubt on that. But I just think they're waiting for a really organic way to bring him in, if they're going to bring him in at all before his own movie. Now, a little while ago as well, we did have James Gunn say on a podcast on Spotify that The Brave and the Bold, Wonder Woman, Booster Gold, and Paradise Lost are still going well, though some things have changed. Well, you could, incorporate the some things have changed thing to kind of what I was just saying, but I think, when I saw a lot of people thinking, because again, some of the top replies to this, some things have changed, and they post a picture of Robert Pattinson's Batman, I swear to God. I think, what he's detailing there is, well, we know that the original showrunner for Booster Gold is no longer doing Booster Gold, but Booster Gold is still going along very, very well. I think Gunn is very gung-ho about doing Booster Gold, so you could just attribute that to some things have changed. Paradise Lost, who knows what could have changed there, if anything at all. Wonder Woman, well, things kind of changed there just in of like the initial plans of the DCU, but Wonder Woman could have led to some changes with Paradise Lost. Maybe they're kind of figuring out, okay, well, now we're doing Wonder Woman. Is this going to actually have any ripple effects on Paradise Lost? Because maybe we thought we'd have Paradise Lost, released before we ever did a Wonder Woman film. So is there any ripple effects or vice versa on either project releasing within the same 5-year span of one another, potentially? Who knows? I wouldn't deep it in the sense of, well, some things have changed because Pattinson, all of that stuff. This is just, okay, it's actually great to hear that they're all going along pretty well. And I hope to hear some very significant updates and stuff like that, especially in 2026. And maybe some new confirmations of, like, whatever that Jimmy Olsen show is, where he's going to do like a highlight on villains of the DCU. And, what happened to that Dead Man tease that Gunn... Do you guys remember the Dead Man tease that Gunn just ambiguously put out there on Instagram and on Threads? That was, the co-CEO of DC Studios just putting out a picture of Deadman. And it's like, okay, we heard that a Deadman series could be in the works, but like, nothing so far. So, I do think that there is quite a bit to hear about, and we will be hearing more and more and more in the coming months. And, I just hope that October Comic-Con yields some interesting things for mostly Lanterns and Supergirl. But moving on to another tidbit here, we have Brandon Davis from Phase Zero saying, has Sean Gunn filmed more scenes as Max Lord for future Peacemaker episodes, Lanterns, or Supergirl? And we had Sean Gunn saying, I cannot confirm nor deny. So now people are kind of like, okay, well, oh crap, like maybe Maxwell Lord could actually feature in Supergirl, or even Lanterns, or maybe another scene in Peacemaker Season 2, in addition to that Justice Gang interview. And, we've always known that Maxwell Lord would ripple in and out of project. I think this is just very self-explanatory anyway, because of the whole Justice Gang concept. So I don't see why he would really be in Supergirl, because that's quite an independent story as soon as Kara is in space, if it doesn't already pick up in space. So I think the next main thing, unless we see him actually in Lanterns because of Guy Gardner being in Lanterns, maybe they exchange a line there, would be Superman, the sequel, this follow-up to Superman, which surrounds that group of characters that we saw in the Superman movie. And then there's the whole theories of these Justice League International inspirations, maybe more members being added. I really want Martian Manhunter and other characters like that to be incorporated and added into the fold. Again, this isn't me saying we're literally going to get what you're probably seeing on screen, an actual Justice League International. It's just, there's flavors and inspirations being injected into that, I guess you could say. Speaking of new characters, I had quite a few people ask me about this, and this was a little while ago as well. So from Home of DCU saying, James Gunn says corporations play a huge role in the DCU. Gunn says there's Luthor Corp, there's Lord Tech, and Stag Industries, and Wayne Enterprises, which are the 4 big companies vying for another type of domination. And I think this is absolutely true. This absolutely connects to how we have corporate-funded superhero teams, literally corporately sponsored. I think, Gunn is going to do another slow cooker thing here, as I described a second ago, not necessarily, what you would say, okay, we're building up to Brainiac or Necron. But no, it's like slow cooker things that are kind of still important and maintain a reverberating presence as a story in the DCU. One of those would be corporations, of course. But this also echoes out into what I was teasing a second ago with how a lot of people were saying to me, Boba, did you hear about the Green Arrow comment a little while back? Hey, why wasn't Queen Industries mentioned in this quote? I mean, as Gunn said, the 4 big companies, Wayne Industries, Stag Industries, Lord Tech, and Luthor Corp. So to connect that into what Gunn said, I believe it was on the Peacemaker podcast, and I think this is a very fair comment to make, where when they were talking about the Green Arrow joke from Peacemaker Season 1 in their recaps, James Gunn said,
is Green Arrow canon? I don't know. I'm not willing to say it. We don't really know. We don't have Green Arrow as part of our system right now. So maybe Green Arrow exists, maybe doesn't. I'm not sure. So that's a maybe.
So not at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think on the most baseline level, that is just him being honest in terms of where he's like, okay, we're doing all this stuff. I don't know. I'm not willing to say if he's canon as of right now or where I would implement him or how or where I would put him kind of thing. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But ultimately it's because he's not a part of our system yet. And what he means by system most likely is what we're laying out, what we're approaching right now, what I have approached in terms of overarching story, in addition to maybe some of the more, albeit canonically connected projects, but like Clayface, which is slightly a bit more independent, but will still connect again. Green Arrow is just something we haven't even properly thought about, unless he's really trying to keep it lock and key. I know Gunn's a big fan of Green Arrow, but when you do add this in conjunction with the other quote saying 4 big companies, being Lord Tech, Stag Industries, Wayne Enterprises, and Luthor Corp, this just, again, I think reaffirms his quote of okay, it doesn't mean we're not going to see Green Arrow one day. It's just that, quite simply, it's not something we're getting to right now. Now, I think he should include Queen Industries in that quote, because just because you include Queen Industries in that quote, it doesn't mean we have to see Green Arrow for another 5 to 7 years. I think we can all understand that there's lots of other things that we need to get to and that are already announced before we have to do an actual Oliver Queen. But you could have been like, okay, the 5 big companies. That's the way I would have personally handled it, just for world building sake. And again, I'm not really that bothered about it, even though Green Arrow is one of my most wanted heroes in the DCU, because for me, I think we just need to realize that with all of the things we have announced and, half the things that are leaked or some of the rumored things that they need to do, whether that's Booster Gold, whether that's Paradise Lost, whether that's Wonder Woman's, okay, we've had a Teen Titans kind of movie announced, even though it's on the back burner. We've still got the Superman somewhat sequel. We've got Brave and the Bold. We've got Clayface. There's so many that, okay, don't forget, we need to kind of do those before it's we shoehorn in other characters like Green Arrow. Now, I'm only saying that from the sense of, look, if you're a big fan of characters like Zatanna, Green Arrow, Constantine, Dr. Fate, whoever it is, sure, we want to see them, but just because they haven't been announced yet, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's more just don't forget, if you were to use the example of a jam session on Spotify and you have a queue order with your friends to play songs, sure, there might be the occasional project like Sergeant Rock or Clayface where it was pitched and it was just ready to go kind of thing, and they might drag that song to the top of the queue. Sure, you could say that about Green Arrow, but don't forget there's still a queue. And we do need to get through some of them before demanding as fans that, no, where is this character? Why isn't that character here? So I don't mind being patient. I just would have preferred to hear that Queen Industries is one of the big companies out there, even if that meant we didn't have to see him, Green Arrow himself, Oliver Queen, for another several years. But technically, it could still be a big company out there, even though it wasn't said in this quote. Now, as for the Batman, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of little nuggets here. So in a new interview with Josh Horowitz, he was asked about how, 6 people have read the Batman Part 2 script, with James Gunn saying that only 6 people have read it. Will you be the 7th person? And Colin Farrell said, I will be one of the privileged 7 come tomorrow evening. I have it at home. I can't wait to read it. I'm going to put the kettle on and sit down, pick a nice cozy corner, and just get into it. Now, it's important to remember this interview could have been filmed a little while ago now with the press for Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell's new movie. So he's most likely read it at this point. So again, if Colin Farrell gets spoken to, he could maybe say something like, hey man, I've read it. I love it. I don't think he would give too much away beyond that. But it is kind of cool to hear that, hey, the script is being sent around to actors like Colin Farrell, who doesn't have that many scenes in the Batman Part 2. And as for like not many scenes, well, we did hear a little while ago from Colin Farrell, going back to what I just said, through him saying, I don't have many scenes, I don't believe, but I'll be there for whatever. Matt Reeves is so brilliant. I don't know what the story is yet at that point in time, but he must have been told enough where he won't have too many scenes, kind of like the first movie, but at the same time, it's not to diminish his role or his presence in the actual microcosm that is Gotham. The way I've explained it before is that I suspect, just like how, don't forget in the first film, you had like the main propped up villain being, you know, the main Rogues Gallery character, the Riddler. In the second film, we're going to have that position vacant, right? But in the first film, in addition to Penguin's role, we had Carmine Falcone, who was still kind of like a looming, overarching big bad in the back. Now, in Part 2, I assume that Oz is going to take that kind of looming, overarching big bad position that Carmine Falcone had, which could free up another kind of third antagonisty kind of role that the Penguin occupied in the first film. Now, I don't know exactly who that could be. We've talked about on the discussion series how, what if Tommy Elliott is more of a public enemy to Bruce, because, you know, we're getting more Bruce Wayne in the second film. Maybe there's a villain for Batman, a new Rogues Gallery villain, let's just say for the argument's sake, Scarecrow or whatever else. But for the Bruce Wayne public side, you might have him burning the candle on both ends, be like, okay, here's my Batman villain, but here's also my Bruce Wayne public villain, where they're trying to kind of cancel me out in public after the Riddler put out that message to the, you know, all the population of Gotham about my parents, where they don't have the full story. I don't know, like that's just a random thing. I'm just trying to point out how there are potentially a few positions that can now be filled in different ways in Part 2 when you kind of compare it to Part 1. And that's why Oz doesn't necessarily have to have tons of scenes. And I feel very confident that they are doing Penguin Season 2. We could even see like Penguin work in conjunction to whoever is actually filling that main Rogues Gallery slot in the Batman Part 2. Because that is still a bit of a mystery as of right now, despite people being confident about Hush or the Court of Owls. It could be somebody else. It really could be. And if you have any ideas, kind of expanding on what I just said, if you think that they could do a similar structure to the kind of villainous characters from Part 1, but also in Part 2, let me know your thoughts there. We've also just had an interview surface from the Superman press tour, where James Gunn was asked about the Batman Part 2 script. So this is where, at that point in time, he hadn't read it, but he was asked if he had read it, and this is what he replied. And David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers, keeps writing me and saying, have you read it? Have you read it yet? And I'm like, dude, I'm doing press. I haven't read the script yet. Peter Safran likes it very much, but he hasn't told Matt Reeves that, so this is a spoiler for him. And although that isn't like mind-blowing stuff, it's just kind of cool to be like, David Zaslav was kind of hounding Gunn to be like, hey man, you know, I've read it. Have you read it? Have you read it yet, dude? Like, have you read it? Because Zaslav, that sounds like he's quite eager for Gunn to read it. I also like the idea of how Peter Safran liked it, but he hadn't told Matt Reeves that yet himself, so that's a spoiler for Matt Reeves. So he said that kind of as like a behind-the-scenes conversation to Gunn, to the point of where one of the co-CEOs of DC Studios really liked the script from more of a truthful perspective there. And he hadn't even told the filmmaker yet. So do you know what I mean? It's very encouraging to hear that. I mean, I know this is kind of old news, because now we know that the script was handed in, and the latest update is that there are some things yet to be figured out, and that is kind of true with the whole, you know, Greg Fraser thing, you know, maybe needing a new cinematographer, but it's still encouraging nonetheless. It kind of basically rings true to what we've heard from some major trades reporting that sources are saying that Warner Brothers is very happy with the Batman Part 2 and things are going along very, very well. But ladies and gentlemen, that is everything I'm going to waffle on about today. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you consider leaving a like rating. If you're still watching right now, consider subscribing for more videos just like this. But I'm going to love you and leave you. So once again, appreciate all of you. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.